The junior doctors' strike has brought out a lot of bad commentary from our political class. On LBC, though, Ollie Dugmore from Politics Joe hit the nail on the head.
Are junior doctors' pay demands fair? That's what Cara wants to know.
Yes.
So how would you pay for it?
Is that all you have to say?
Would you like? Well, I mean, we can get into it. How would I pay for it?
Yeah, how would you pay for it? Where are you finding that money?
Taxes.
Okay.
Tax the rich, tax them until the pips squeak.
So genuinely, what taxes are you raising?
Hang on,
Who am I arguing with?
Let Ollie set out his stall.
There is money in our political system. Where it gets spent is a political choice. Let's talk about the £4 billion in unusable PPE, a lot of which that money went to Conservative Party cronies, peers, donors. It is an ethical choice how we spend money in government. And I would challenge people in this country that if they want to go out and they want to clap for the NHS during a pandemic when we were literally sending them into hospitals to confront a disease that we didn't know anything about, sometimes wearing bin liners, those people deserve fair pay. They're not actually asking for an extraordinary pay rise. They're asking for the restoration of what they were paid in 2008. That's not an unreasonable demand.
So do you think part of the solution might be for the government to come forward and say, OK, we get that you've lost this money since 2010. We accept that. We accept that part of your argument. We can't give you 35% now. You don't expect it. There's no way that we can do that. But over the next 3, 4, 5 years, we will do it. And here's the proposal.
Yeah.
Now that, to me, would be the logical way forward.
It's called negotiation.
No, but Ian, I'm sorry. Everybody has lost out.
I'm sorry, Ian. Everybody has lost out. Now, that final argument was from Kate Andrews. She was formerly spokesperson for the billionaire-funded Institute for Economic Affairs. She is now economics editor at the right-wing Spectator, which is also owned by a billionaire. That means she should really know that not everyone has, in fact, lost out over recent years. In December last year, the Equality Trust found that the number of billionaires in the UK had increased by 20% since the start of the pandemic. That's in large part due to asset price rises, and also there was a boom in the stock market. And this is from the Guardian write-up of the Equality Trust report. So the report found that the number of billionaires in the UK had risen more than tenfold from 15 in 1990 when the Sunday Times first published its rich list after taking into account inflation over that time period. Using inflation-adjusted wealth data from archived copies of the rich list, it said the combined wealth of Britain's billionaires had risen from £53 billion in 1990 to more than £653 billion in 2022. This represents an increase in billionaire wealth of over 1,000% over the past 32 years, the report said. Dahlia, Kate Andrews, thinks everyone's lost out. So, doctors, nurses, everyone should accept a pay cut because everyone's lost out. Why can she not see the people who have gained from this, who just so happen to own the newspaper she currently works for and fund the organisations she worked for beforehand?
Maybe she hasn't been invited to her boss's cocktail party, so she doesn't know how her billionaire bosses are living, how the super rich of this country have not only barely been touched by the crisis that has ravaged our living conditions, but have actually thrived and made a lot of money out of those conditions. But you are completely right, Michael, to highlight the fact that Kate Andrews is, one of the many pundits that we are subjected to who have been reared by the Institute of Economic Affairs. We have to remember that the IEA is also the ideological driver, or was the ideological driver, between the catastrophic crisis that was Trussonomics, which tanked the economy. If we had a normal media, they would not allow anyone who is associated with such a discredited economic project to be on TV acting like an expert when it comes to economic affairs. And when she says, everyone's lost out, obviously, as you've pointed out, the cream of the crop, the 1% of the 1% have actually gained a huge amount from the economic chaos that we're all suffering from. But even if you were to take it into good faith and say, yes, like the vast majority of people in this country have lost out of this economic crisis, which has, started in 2010 and is continuing today under the management of the Conservative Party, I would say, well, that's thanks to your economic ideology, the economic ideology that organizations like the IEA have foisted upon us by having a constant media presence and constantly shifting the Overton window and shifting our framework on whether or not we are allowed to scrutinize government decisions on spending. to constantly shift that to the right. But when it comes to what Ollie said, Ollie was completely right. Decisions on where to place and how to distribute the vast amounts of wealth that exist not only in the British economy, but in the global economy, those decisions are political. And the fact is that this government has made the political decision to refuse to even sit down to the negotiating table to discuss with junior doctors what restoration of pay would look like, which, by the way, to restore junior doctors' pay, which is being portrayed as such a radical and unreasonable demand, would cost £1 billion. That is a drop in the ocean when it comes to government spending, for example, on the billions of pounds of COVID contracts that went out to their crony mates, the £37 billion that went out on track and trace, a track and trace system that, as we all experienced, was pretty much a spectacular failure. The £4 billion on PPE that was unusable. When it comes to coughing up the cash that will enrich their fellow class travellers, there is no problem with shelling out billions and billions of pounds. What the £1 billion it would take to restore doctors' pay could be found in the back of the sofa. But there is a political decision here to lower the bar of expectation that we have for what a government should provide, and also to send the clear message that labour organising, that trade unions will not be engaged with or listened to try and essentially break these strikes. I think it's very important that we begin to understand this and we begin to have more voices like Ollie in the media who can really say that these are not natural laws of economics, but these are concrete political decisions made by a government that for whom it will never be enough. The tax cuts will never be enough. The spending cuts will never be enough. The lowering of wages of public sector workers will never be enough. They see it as a class war and a class struggle to get the most that they can out of this economy for them and their mates. And we should start seeing it in the same way.